And so to help us think a little bit more about math, we have Mr. Lavigne, who is the school's communications manager. Let's give him a warm PBS welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for letting me join you today. It's funny to be on this side of the MPR. Usually I'm in the back with the video camera. Thank you, Mr. Young. But today, I get to be up here, and I want to share with you some stories about my relationship with math. Now, I can already hear some of you thinking, what is this guy going to tell us about math? Isn't he the photographer guy? But that's exactly my point. Yes, I am the photographer guy. I am also the guy who writes and designs and edits things for the school's website. And I'm the guy who does interviews and videos with your classmates and teachers. And I am someone who loves math, who does logic puzzles for fun, who watches YouTube channels like Mathologer and Stand Up Math and Numberphile. And I use math in my job every day, even though you wouldn't think it. Before I show you how, I want to tell you a story from back when I was 6 years old. The year was 1991. The iPhone was still 16 years from being invented. This is what mobile phones looked like back then. And that's what I looked like back then. Back then, I was in Ms. Richmond's first grade class at Jefferson Elementary School. See? That's me. And that's Mrs. Richmond. And just look at all that early 90s style. Oh yeah. I don't think anyone would wear those pants ever again. Now, when I was in Mrs. Richmond's class, she asked me to take a special test. And that test told her that I was really good at math. And she told me that. And do you know what I thought that meant? I thought that meant that I could stop trying in math class. That I could just let my math powers do their magic. And so the next time I took a math test, that's what I did. I looked at the paper and I let my math powers do the trick. I just wrote down numbers that came to me in my head. And I finished in record time. And I practically ran to her desk to turn it in. Mrs. Richmond asked me if I was sure I was finished. I nodded enthusiastically. Mrs. Richmond asked me if I had checked my answers. I told her I didn't need to. And a few days later, Mrs. Richmond handed me my graded work back. How many do you think I got right?
0.
Exactly. 0. Not one. And now, many years later, I won't tell you how many, although you could probably do the math, get it? I still remember this moment in my life because it was the day I learned that there's nothing magical about math. There are no math people. There are people who choose to learn as much math as they can, and there are people who don't make that choice. And as I continued through school, I learned math and writing and science and history and art and civics and theater, and I learned there were parts of each that were awesome. And some people tried to get me to pick. Some of my artsy friends, the ones who spent most of their time in choir rehearsals or in the theater or in the visual arts studio, they didn't understand why I liked taking challenging math classes. And some of my classmates in math didn't understand why I wasted my time, their words, not mine, acting and directing in the theater. Luckily, though, I had teachers who encouraged me to try everything. They didn't make me pick whether I was going to be mathy or artsy. They told me I could be both. And so I went on to college, and I picked a double major, theater and math. And when I tell people to this day that those were my two majors, a lot of them give me this face. But that's okay. They can be confused if they like. The good news is that I have found lots of places in my job here at PBS where being mathy and artsy overlap. And I'd like to show you a couple of them because I think they're really cool. For starters, take a look at this postcard that I designed on Wednesday, just 2 days ago. I used my artsy side to pick a picture I thought would look good, and to pick the colors, and to pick the fonts, the way the text looks. My artsy side also helped me do the writing. But there is math hidden here too. For instance, the post office is picky, and they won't mail things unless you've got the parameters just right. Leave just enough room for the stamp, you gotta leave this much room for the address. They're picky. So, I had to use my measuring skills and my geometry to make sure the whole thing was within their guidelines. I also had to use my fractions to figure out how big to make each piece of the postcard. You see, the page is 8.5 inches wide, and I needed to make sure there was 1/4 of an inch of white space on each side. And then I had to take the space that was left and cut it in half, like the bottom, or cut it into thirds, like on top. The mathy part of my brain also is the part that helps me with precision, getting as close as possible to exact measurements. And precision can mean the difference between a postcard that looks just right and one that looks, well, a little off. So, see, all the same pieces are there. I didn't get rid of anything or change anything. They're just in weird places, and it doesn't look quite right. Oh, that's better. I can't look at that. It hurt me to make that example. Another way I use math every day is with color. Math is color? Color is math? Listen, you've probably dealt with color in art class with Ms. Armashevitz, and you might have seen the color wheel. Something like this. And you know that if you mix two colors, you get a different color, right? Like yellow and blue make green. Well, with a computer, there are lots of ways to build colors in exactly that way. Check out this color. Do you recognize it? It's PBS blue. It's our very specific blue that we use here at PBS. But I can't just tell the computer, hey computer, I want PBS blue, please. It will have no idea what I'm talking about. Instead, I have to give it some numbers. So up here are 3 different ways to define PBS blue. HSB, RGB, and CMYK. And I definitely don't have time to explain what all of those mean. But what's really cool is that you can do math to those numbers up there, like multiply them or divide them, to go from one color to another related color. Like if I wanted to make this color half as dark, I could divide each of those CMYK numbers by 2. See? Much lighter, but it's still related. One last quick demonstration. Many of you, as I said, know me as the photo guy. Well, what if I told you that every digital photo that you've ever looked at is just numbers? See that? That's a spreadsheet. Not very exciting. It's just numbers. Well, I'm going to set some rules so that those numbers turn into colors, either red, green, or blue, and their brightness is going to be based on what the number is in the box. Watch. Okay, now we're getting somewhere, right? But it still doesn't look like a photo. Maybe if we take a step back. Let's keep going. Hey, wait a second. I know that guy. That's Dr. Erickson. That's the exact same spreadsheet. All I did was change the zoom. The reason this works is that each of the boxes in the spreadsheet acts like a pixel on your digital screens, like an iPad or an iPhone. In fact, this is what an iPhone screen looks like under a microscope. Does that look familiar? It's red, green, and blue boxes all over again. So your iPads are just giant spreadsheets, and videos are just big collections of spreadsheets, changing over time. Numbers, 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 all the way down. Neat, huh? So working with digital photos is just one more way that my artsy side and my mathy side come together. Thanks for listening, and have a math artsy day.